Preparing, setting up your meeting, linking to YouTube. It's just loading. All right, it's live.
Awesome.
Let's see. Cool. I think it's working. It's happening. Right. So we're on to it. Hey, everybody! Welcome to the first remote episode of Coffee or Beer with me, Darren, and my guest today, Jake Richardson. Hey, buddy.
Hey, man. How you doing?
Very well, thanks. What part of the UK are you coming to us from today?
So I live in Lancashire, so northwest. Just moved to Preston, so I'm about an hour or so away from Manchester.
Nice.
So yeah, so Manchester's kind of like the hub for kind of all the kind of music things that I kind of do. Yeah.
Brilliant. So that's kind of your hometown now.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Brilliant. Let's cheers to it because we've both just been talking about our beers. So I'm drinking Hop House today, one of my personal favorites. What about you?
Yeah, I've gone for Peroni. It was a big favorite of mine at uni. So yeah, we've gone old school.
Excellent. Cheers, pal.
Cheers, mate.
If there's one thing that we can be a little bit grateful for in this lockdown, it's that at least the weather stayed good.
Yeah, it's been really nice.
Going outside is still really lovely. So everybody, Jake is a freelance journalist for Kerrang, Loudwire, and Note to Scene, which is a more recent edition.
Yeah, so Note to Scene is a new website that's been set up by the guys that run Loudwire. So the Note to Scene podcast has been going for several years, run by Tyler Sharp, who used to be one of the editors at Alternative Press, and they've just recently kind of turned it into a website as well as the podcast. So it covers like emo, pop punk, metalcore, the kind of like Warped Tour scene, kind of like a sort of nostalgic take on things, really. So yeah, really, really good website, and really excited to be involved with that.
Excellent. How long have you been doing this for?
Just the freelance journalism in general?
Yeah.
3 years.
How did you get into that? Like, how did you land the job?
So before I kind of got my first break, which was with Kerrang, I was at uni. Initially wanted to write for the student newspaper, like about music, which I was kind of started doing, but things like weren't very well organized, and I got kind of a bit fed up with it. So I set up a blog just because I kind of fancied, testing the water, doing some like reviews and kind of like list featurey things. Really, I was kind of like mimicking almost the style of what I was reading in Kerrang. I was just kind of testing the water, really. So I set up the blog, did that for, I don't know how long, probably a few months I did it without anyone, I think, really ever noticing, because, it was just up on Blogspot. There's
early days,
hundreds of thousands of them. Yeah, I'm sure it was read by about like 10 people. But, eventually, it got kind of a bit of attention from like publicists and bands. I get like emails and messages being like, will you interview our band or review the record, whatever, for the blog. So while I was at uni, that eventually went from just a blog on Blogspot to kind of a full-on website. And I kind of got together with some other students at uni who were interested in writing about music. And I kind of like ran the website, and they all did album reviews. We interviewed bands, did features, that kind of thing. So I did that for about a year or so. And then I used that as the basis of an application to do work experience at Kerrang. And I did that in my 4th year at university. I was at university for 5 years because I did a part-time master's after my BA.
In writing?
Yeah. So, yeah. So I did the application to do work experience at Kerrang in my 4th year at uni. Went down to Kerrang in London, and it went great. And I kind of got taken on by those guys after that, and then, as well as starting with Kerrang, I then started with Upset magazine and their sister publication Dork, and Alternative Press as well. So kind of, yeah, once I kind of did the work experience gig at Kerrang, that went well. They took me on, I then thought I would try with some other places as well, because, I was only just had my foot in the door with Kerrang. I wasn't obviously doing much at first. So yeah, that's kind of how it all sort of came together.
Did you find that when you were at shows that you were almost like formulating reviews in your head anyway at the time? It just kind of made you think, this is why I'd like to go on and do this. Because writing is a skill, like especially like creative writing and engaging writing. That's definitely not an easy thing to do. So to put your thoughts and stuff in a way and translate that into a way that other people are going to find like they're instantly going to get it and feel like they get what you're trying to say just from reading it in the magazine. It's super engaging. That's not exactly easy. So did it kind of come a bit naturally to you, or did you practice a lot?
To be honest, I felt like it came reasonably naturally. I mean, my degree was in English literature and writing. So, I've always known that I'm a decent writer, and, that's kind of, what I'm good at. As for, writing about music, I think, I started reading Kerrang when I was 14. And then from the moment I picked up that first issue, since I went to do work experience, I never missed an issue of Kerrang. I, religiously read it, alongside others like Rock Sound, Big Cheese when that was around, Alternative Press. So, I'd been just reading that kind of like rock media so much that I think kind of, having, a decent ability at, writing in general, and then, having kind of absorbed so much of that, when it actually came to having a go at it, I felt like I had a reasonable grasp of how to write about music. I mean, obviously, when I look back at what I was writing 5 years ago now, I think it's pretty crap. But it at least has. Well, it's not terrible, but it at least kind of had the kind of semblance of a person that knew what they were doing vaguely when it came to writing. So yeah, I didn't kind of study it too much, or practice loads of times before I started putting stuff online. I just kind of rolled with it, and really, I think my writing only improved once I got taken on by actual publications. And I guess then I was more paying attention to like what other people were writing, and kind of comparing it to my own work, and obviously then you're dealing with editors and people like that who obviously their job is to look at your writing and make it better. So once I got to the point where I was submitting pieces to editors, and then I would see the final thing having run, and there'd obviously be tweaks and changes, and then I was getting more of an understanding of I could have done that and made it better.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wouldn't say it was until sort of I actually began writing for proper publications that I really kind of felt like I was developing and sort of progressing as a writer. Yeah.
Sure. What do you look for when you're at these shows? What do you look for in the bands that you're reviewing?
In terms of like live reviews and being at gigs, I think with gigs, I think it can sometimes be trickier if you've never heard the band before on record. I think it can be trickier if that's the first introduction to them, because a lot in terms of a live setting, a band can really kind of pop off live, but then on record you might then listen to it and actually think, I'm not that into this. Some of it comes down to stage presence and showmanship and all that kind of thing. But generally when I hear you know, a band that I've never heard before, I guess for it to kind of grab my attention, I'm either looking for, it sounds boring and obvious, but good songwriting, you know,
course, yeah.
just hooks, choruses, melodies, anything that gets stuck in your head and, makes you think, these guys know what they're doing, these guys are writing good music. I guess, the other side of that is, maybe the music might not necessarily grab me or get stuck in my head right away, but if you can see that a band's maybe trying something different, maybe shooting for something big in terms of, concept, or perhaps you can tell they're trying to say something different, do something that's maybe a bit more profound or whatever. So generally it's either, the songs get stuck in your head straight away. You just instantly think, these guys can write songs, these guys can play. It's either that or, I do like it when I just basically see a band trying something different, because I get sent so much stuff every day that, I wouldn't say it all kind of, melds into one, but,
it kind of does.
It kind of does. I'm sure it's the same for you guys when you get bands submitting for PR. You do have to wade through a lot of stuff to get to the good stuff. Yeah.
And when the one thing does stand out, it really stands out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Has that happened? Can you recall a time when that's happened recently?
Yeah, I think one band that grabbed me straight away was a new band called Wargasm. So you know them?
Yeah. I think
they're
great.
They're really good. I think they're going to do really well. So I'm blanking on the name now, but they're a two-piece. The guy used to be in Dead, and then the girl and bass player Milky. I don't think she was in the band before, but yeah, the two of them together, they've just got such good chemistry and energy. It's just amazing, and they've only got 4 songs out at the moment, I think. But they're like they're like a punk duo sort of thing. But when I interviewed them recently for Kerrang, they were talking about wanting to bring new metal back, and there's just something about that band. They've got a great image, they've got a great sound, they've got great energy, and their music just kind of hooks you straight away. So they're one that, to be honest, before Kerrang asked me to interview them, I hadn't heard of them. Mm-hmm. But as soon as I pressed play on that song after being asked to interview them, I thought, I know why Kerrang are championing you.
Yeah,
it's obvious.
They really do. They really do pack a punch, and they have only really come on the scene very recently.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're a great shout. I suppose so. A big question for you is what role does press still play in today's play today for bands? Like, how relevant is it? Do you think? Does it actually matter?
I think it does. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm biased.
You're gonna say that?
I am the press, so
yeah.
That's kind of it's my job, obviously. But I think it is relevant, yes, because although bands now with social media and everything, it feels like they have that kind of connection to the fans straight away, where a band can go to the fans now direct and tell their story the way they want to. Whereas 20 years ago, when the internet kind of wasn't around, it was down to magazines to kind of amplify the story around these bands.
Yeah.
But that being said, I think having someone who, like the press, like magazines, bloggers, whatever, there to kind of analyze the music and ask the questions that maybe the bands kind of aren't asking themselves. Because, I think you need sometimes, like interviewing bands, you need to ask kind of like tough or uncomfortable questions about the music, and that can then reveal something that maybe either the band themselves hadn't thought about, or certainly the listener would never have kind of considered. So I think the press offers a really kind of good fresh perspective on bands that you wouldn't get if the band was just saying, this is our music, this is what it sounds like, this is what it's about. Because at the end of the day, art is subjective. And, although, a band may write a song with a certain thing in mind, people might listen to it and think of something completely different, or might have a slightly fresh take on it. So I think, magazines and media and people that write about bands and interview bands, you know, I do think they play an important role in, you know, developing the story around artists, you know, because, you know, I don't think any band can really, you know, get to a big level without having, you know, a good story and a good narrative and, you know, something else going on around them. And I think, you know, the press plays kind of a good part in developing that with bands.
It does, and it can have a very great effect, a great impact on their career, depending on what stage they're at. For me, it's a sign of credibility. That's why it will never disappear, because with something like Spotify, the barrier to entry there is anyone can do it. Anyone can put their track on Spotify, and anyone can have the music uploaded and put out there. But not everyone can get in Kerrang, and not everyone can get reviewed in these magazines. It's a sign of credibility if someone like yourself says that this song's good. That stands for something. That's the reason why people are still reaching out to PR companies to try and get press, because it's one thing having a bunch of definitely fans, but it's one thing having a bunch of people that the bands, like you say, have been able to reach themselves through socials, who might all big them up. But then it's a different thing to have the magazines say that, which is why there is always going to be a place for press. But something that we got told a long time ago in my band by a previous manager was that you don't want to go into press too soon, because if you go into press too soon and, you know, you keep pitching at them to try and get them to come down to a show, try to get them to review you, whatever, and it goes badly, especially in a big publication like Kerrang, if they don't like it, then that can be the undoing of your kind of reputation and career right there. Do you think that's true?
I think I've seen examples of it going both ways. You know, and I don't always think that, you know, a bad review is necessarily, you know, a bad thing for a band, you know, in two ways, because, you know, first of all, you often find that, you know, a lot of reviews tend to fall a little bit in the middle, you know, rather than saying something's amazing or something's terrible, you know, I would say at least 50% of reviews kind of come down on the side of like, this is all right, you know, it's decent, it could be better.
Is that good? Is that a good way of writing, in your opinion? Do you think should it be a middle line?
Not if you're just doing it for the sake of it. If you're kind of scared of taking an opinion, you know, that should never be the way you approach writing about something. You know, I think it is often the case when you get sent something, particularly if it's a new band, that, you know, you might see promise in it, but also see flaws and areas for improvement. You know, and obviously myself, and I don't think anyone that writes about music, you know, got into it to kind of, you know, be really harsh on bands and, you know, drag things and say that they're terrible. But yeah, so I think, you know, you do see a lot of middle of the road kind of reviews that are kind of like saying something is okay. So when you actually see a review that's like, this isn't very good, you know, obviously, you know, it won't be a nice thing to read for the band if, you know, if they're being criticized, but it still kind of stands out on the page. It still grabs the reader's attention, or it always did for me when I was reading Kerrang before I wrote. You know, if I saw, you know, like 10 album reviews and like 7 or 8 of them were like 3Ks and there was like a 1K review or a 5K review, that's where my eyes went straight away.
Yeah, me too.
So, you know, obviously it's, you know, it's not a, you know, not a nice thing to have your work criticized, but, you know, it's generally constructive as well. You know,
it's going to happen. You could put yourself out there in the public domain. You've got to be able to take some criticism.
Yeah, you know, I learned that very quickly myself with writing. You know, I remember the first piece I wrote for Alternative Press was about My Chemical Romance, who obviously have a huge enthusiastic fan base. And yes, you know, in the comments on Facebook, some people were like, "This is good." Other people, I remember one person saying, "This person should never write about My Chemical Romance again." So, you know, and that's, you kind of have to take that as a creative, you know, as someone who is putting their work out there. You know, not everyone is gonna love it. So yeah, I don't think a you know, a one bad review can, you know, totally like ruin your band's momentum. But, you know, because I have seen bands that, you know, have early on have had kind of, in Kerrang certainly have had like slightly negative reviews, and they've gone on to actually become quite big bands in Kerrang's world. So yeah, I don't think, you know, a bad review will necessarily kind of, you know, stilt your momentum, but you obviously, I think you want to come in at the right time and make sure that even if you get a bad review, you've still got a lot going on to kind of, you know, put it right pretty quickly and kind of move on.
Would you say that your instincts are quite on the money when it comes to EP and album reviews? Do you take many listens, or actually when the first time your first impression is usually right, would you say? How long does it take you to kind of ingest the music?
To be honest, generally after a first listen, and even after just listening to the first couple of songs on a release, I tend to get a feel for whether I like it or not. You know, obviously, you know, I'll listen to, you know, anything that's sent through for review several times, you know, because you want to make sure that you really understand the music, that you've not missed anything, and obviously you want to give everything, you know, the attention it deserves when you're writing about it and being critical of it. But I would say that 8-9 times out of 10, the first instinct, the first feeling I get about the music tends to be, you know, that tends to form what ends up in the review. You know, generally, if I hear it initially and like it, then the review will reflect that. And likewise. So,
have you found your? Would you say you found your own voice now as a writer?
I think I'm finding it more, but you know, I think there is still, you know, I think I've still got a long way to go, because, you know, I've only been doing this for 3 years, and you know, there are people writing for Kerrang and the other big magazines who've been doing it for decades. So
still a bit too soon, really, to.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I have a voice, and I certainly think it's developed from like when I first started. But you know, I've read, you know, certain writers, and I feel like you can like read them and instantly know that that piece of music journalism was written by that writer, because it's, you know, it's got that real voice to it, you know. And I personally don't think that I'm kind of there yet. But you know, I try as much as possible to make sure that kind of like my voice and my kind of perspective is coming through in the writing as much as possible.
Yeah, excellent. So you have been doing it 3 years. Where would you like to? It's the right question is not to say like how much have you changed over that time, or what advice would you give to yourself 3 years ago? But I suppose you're still kind of on a journey. You're still kind of learning. Like
yeah, I mean, you know, I'm still relatively new to it in a way. You know, I certainly thought it would take me a lot longer to get to the point that I've gotten to. So, but I think, and this is, you know, advice for anyone kind of starting out who really wants to do something like this. And, you know, I think writing in particular is to kind of have confidence in it. You know, because I've probably been thinking about like doing writing and starting a blog and putting some of my stuff out there for a while before I actually did it. And it's quite a daunting thing, you know, to put anything, you know, out in the public domain for people to kind of read and criticize. You know, and still even now, you know, I either when I've got like a big piece that's about to be published, or, you know, even if I'm like pitching an idea, you know, I still can get nervous and, you know, can kind of question myself. But yeah, I think, you know, just kind of having, you know, confidence in yourself and, you know, the belief and the kind of drive to just kind of push on and do it is important, because, you know, I was incredibly nervous about going to do work experience at Kerrang. I was really scared.
And they're a small team there as well. So
yeah, there's only about, you know, 10 or so in the office, or less even. So yeah, I was incredibly scared before I went there, and, you know, as soon as I got there, it was great and everyone was lovely, and, you know, it worked out really well. But you know, I guess, yeah, just having that confidence and that, you know, I guess, you know, making that step to put yourself out there is important, because you could be the greatest music writer in the world, but no one's going to come up to you and just hand you that gig of writing for a magazine. You know, you need to put yourself out there. You need to have stuff published, stuff to show people. So, you know, basically, if you want to do it, you know, you have to do it. You have to put yourself out there and you know, and write and make it available for people to see. You have to
write. You have to write a lot and put it out there. Because this is a weird thought that's it's been going through my head for years now, because ever since, you know, playing shows myself and having reviewers turn up. But it's like, you know, you've put yourself in a position where you've basically said, I think that I'm good enough. I deserve to be the one to let other people know my thoughts about what this is like. Yeah. So it's like, it's a strange, it's a completely normal, and it's important. It's a really important position to be in, and the world does need critics. The world needs reviewers. The world needs to have people that review things, because, like we said before, there's that sort of credibility. But it's funny on the part of the individual that's like, well, what makes you the one that everyone should listen to about it? So I suppose it's adjusting to that mindset, and that comes from having the confidence to do it, right? Yeah, because I mean, you know, my opinion is on music is no more important than anyone else's. You know, it's just that, you know, I guess it's something that I'm really passionate about, and something that, you know, that I saw could be a career option, and I decided to, you know, go out and try and do it. So yeah, you know, no one is kind of right or wrong when it comes to whether, you know, music is good or not. Like I said before, it is subjective, but, you know, I guess it's just about being able to kind of, you know, eloquently articulate you know, an opinion and justify it, you know, and, you know, write in an informative way, you know, in a critical way, but also in a way that's kind of, you know, entertaining and engaging to read. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll stay freelance, or where do you see yourself going?
At the moment, I'm happy freelance, mainly because obviously I live in the Northwest. You know, I don't live in London. You know, if I was looking for a you know, a kind of a full-time gig, you know, I would have to move down to London for, you know, 99% of the jobs in the industry. And I'm quite happy where I am. Me and my partner have just bought a house, so we're quite sort of settled. So, you know, for the time being, you know, I want to remain freelance and keep doing this. You know, I just earlier this year did my first full cover feature for Kerrang, which was an amazing feeling. So, you know, yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was awesome. So, you know, I want to kind of do more of those, do more bigger pieces, you know, keep building my portfolio, you know, write more and, you know, for more people. So, you know, I had certainly in the past thought about, you know, I'd love to be like editor of Kerrang, or, you know, I think, you know, anyone who's probably like read Kerrang and is passionate about music has probably thought that. And, you know, perhaps down the line, you know, I might be interested in kind of, you know, getting a job in an office, something full time. But, you know, I quite like the freedom that comes with being freelance. Obviously, it makes kind of the financial side of it a bit kind of unstable.
But it's not is it your full-time gig?
Yeah, it is. So yeah, you shouldn't do this to get rich. I'll certainly say that. But, but it is my full-time thing. So yeah, for the time being, I'm happy kind of doing that, having the freedom, you know, to kind of work from home and
work for all these different publications.
Yeah, work for different publications, and you know, most importantly, I guess, do something that I really enjoy, and that lets me kind of, you know, be creative and means that kind of like no 2 days are the same. So yeah, I'm happy being freelance at the moment. But you know, I guess with anything in life, you don't know kind of what's down
around the corner, like the coronavirus. Like the goddamn coronavirus.
Yeah.
But that's 90% of the game, isn't it? You know, just being happy at work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. What was the double page spread? Who was the band for the double page spread?
Double page.
For the Kerrang feature.
Oh, the cover feature, All Time Low.
Very cool. Very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Have you reviewed them before?
Yeah, I'd interviewed I'd interviewed All Time Low like several times before I actually did the cover. So, you know, I was quite kind of comfortable with you know, we're speaking to them and, you know, writing about them. You know, they're
Do
a
you still get
band.
nervous before doing interviews?
Do I get nervous before doing interviews? Sometimes. It depends. It probably depends a lot on whether I've interviewed them before, and on, I guess, like, you know, the profile of the band or the person. Like, you know, if someone asked me to interview Axl Rose or Ozzy Osbourne, I'd be nervous because that is a star.
Yeah.
But
I think my voice would go very high.
Yeah. But, you know, generally, you know, it depends. You know, obviously, particularly if you're interviewing someone on the phone, it's obviously not, I guess, the most kind of like natural interaction. You can't kind of like, you know, bounce off someone's body language or get that kind of, I guess, natural kind of energy rapport between the two people as easily. So yeah, sometimes I get nervous, but, you know, I'm pretty used to it. You know, I think I must have interviewed probably about 200 bands at least, more probably. So, you know, I'm quite used to it and kind of comfortable with it and everything. Yeah.
Have you met any of your kind of idols or fans, like super bands?
Yeah. So I mentioned My Chemical Romance earlier, and they're like, you know, like the band for me. You know, that they kind of always have been since I like first kind of got into music. And I was lucky enough to interview Frank Iero, the guitarist, a couple of years ago when he was touring with his solo project, and that was really great to go to one of his shows and speak to him, and a guy called Derek Zanetti, who performs as the Homeless Gospel Choir, who were a really good kind of like, well, he performs with the full band now, but he was like a kind of solo one-man band punk act, and he's really great. And yeah, Frank was really nice, and I kind of interviewed the two of them about the tour and their relationship and everything. So yeah, getting to interview one of the guys from My Chem was really cool. So yeah, that's probably the standout one for me thus far. Yeah.
Congratulations, man. Well, long may it continue. Thank you very much for giving over your evening today to do this.
Yeah, no worries.
A lot of fun. So yeah, we'll wrap it up there if that's cool with you.
Awesome. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jake. Great to speak to you, mate. And thanks for watching, everybody. Whoever's out there, this is going to be on the channel now. So brilliant. Well, there'll be more of these to come, I hope. But hope we speak again as well.
Awesome. Yeah, amazing, man.
Thanks, man. Have a good evening.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.